Gentlemen, I think we are onto something because we're hearing a lot about financing, about business models, technology, but this human dimension is often underestimated. So we're going to continue with our next guest who will be combining the empirical evidence from France with concrete case studies. So let's welcome on the stage the researcher and trainer at ADOC Talent Management in Paris, Tele Tonisman. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I also know that I'm standing between you and the lunch break, so I try to be efficient. And I will start with a little story. So a few years ago, my colleagues at ADOC Talent Management, they supported a deep tech startup project. So the technology of this project was outstanding, actually, and the business case was solid. And actually everything looked very promising. And yet, the project stalled and the team fell apart. So here is how actually one of the founders described it. We had never talked and sat down together as a founding team to talk about anything other than our technical results before signing the shareholders' agreement. So I remember it was a very painful moment. Everyone wanted the biggest share because they felt they had contributed more, and we couldn't project ourselves into the future. So some researchers thought what came next would be trivial compared to developing technology. We never managed to reach the consensus. I moved on, and the technology is now sitting unused. And this kind of situation is not exceptional. Because both in deep tech, you can have the best technology and the most sophisticated business plan, but if the founding team does not share a vision, the venture will struggle to succeed. And what's interesting is that from this public policy perspective, basically the stuff that governments do, right? Most of our support systems for deep tech are not designed to address this. So we design deep tech ecosystems as if technology and funding were enough, and as if people would naturally become entrepreneurs along the way. Well, they don't. So today I would like to talk about what we often overlook, very briefly, of course, the human dimension of deep tech. And my message is based on two things. First of all, 18 years of experience of ADOC Talent Management, supporting deep tech startups from the lab to scale up. So we support researchers in transitioning from academia into business, and we help innovative companies build strong teams at every stage, from early projects to growing startups. In practice, what does it mean? It means that we train and coach researcher entrepreneurs, we support founders on team building and leadership, advising HR strategy, and helping recruit key roles from co-founders to C-level experts. And we've been doing this since 2008, working with hundreds of organizations across the innovation ecosystem and supporting also thousands of researchers. And the second reference is that our research within an ANR EcoCare project, one of the first state-supported projects in France, analyzing deep tech policy instruments and their effects on early career researchers' careers. So indeed, we have this laboratory that conducts fundamental and applied research on research careers, doctoral training, skills, competencies, and innovation ecosystems. And from our experience, what we see is quite simple. The human dimension remains only partially addressed, so both at the collective level, right, with team building and organizational alignment, and also the individual level, with a transition from researcher to entrepreneur. And this transition is, of course, not automatic. It involves shift in role, responsibility, and also often in professional identity. I'm a researcher, so of course I have to ask why this is happening. So we can make two hypotheses here. First, because I think the dimension or the deep tech itself is rooted in a scientific excellence, right? So the natural focus in deep tech is on technology, It is on the development of intellectual property, funding, market potential. For example, in France, when we are mapping these deep tech support instruments or policy instruments, we see that only a small share of those instruments are dedicated to preparing individuals and teams for the human challenges of entrepreneurship. And second is that it's also actually relevant in many Central and Eastern European contexts, as studies show. These kind of skill-based approaches are formally present in public discourse, but not always deeply embedded in the practice. So particularly when it comes to supporting transitions, teams, and organizations. So in other words, the kind of vocabulary of skills and competencies exists, but it's not always translated into the concrete support for people. We don't really know what to do with them, right? So let's see some solutions. So what does it mean in practice, in our support measures, to take the human dimensions seriously? So from our experience, it starts with a shift in perspective, right? So, and this involves, first, shift from titles to skills and competencies. And by the way, I use those notions, skills and competencies, interchangeably here for this presentation. And to illustrate it, here is what one of the people we supported told us. I really wanted to be the CEO because I was afraid someone would take my baby, the project, away from me. But once I was able to clearly understand my motivations and strengths, I realized I couldn't let go of the technology. I am now thriving as a CTO, and I brought in a CEO with whom we could build the company. I feel fully aligned with him while also having a strong complementarity. So the message here is that we often think in terms of titles, researcher, founder, CEO, CTO, but titles do not build the companies. Skills and competencies actually do. Also, a skill and competencies is not only knowledge and not just a potential, right? As we define it, it's the kind of ability to act effectively in a real-life situation, which means that skill only exists when it has been demonstrated, or not when it has been claimed. So next time when someone's saying that they are creative or they're good in business, the real question is when do they actually have done it, in what context, and what was the real outcome to this. Second, activating existing skills. So what does it mean? It may become a bit surprising what I'm saying here, but researchers already, to our experience, have many of the skills needed for entrepreneurship. Dealing with complexity, problem solving, autonomy, persistence, and so forth. But these are rarely actually recognized or framed as entrepreneurial resources. So part of the challenge is recognizing your own skills, but the other part of the challenge is actually shifting your mindset and motivation to actually use those skills and competencies in an entrepreneurial context, right? And this requires a transition from researcher to entrepreneur, which is not only about learning new tools, but also redefining how do you position yourself. As one of the co-founders said, I didn't dare share my doubts and weaknesses with my co-founders. I was afraid they would see me as a weak, not suited for the role. And then one day I broke down and almost left the project without notice. I was struggling a lot, but the team supported me. They showed me we were a team and that we can succeed together. We found solutions together, and now we feel much stronger as a team. So this is actually what a transition looks like in practice, right? From this kind of doubts to actually stepping into the role. For example, in France, around 20% of young researchers who like to start entrepreneurship, they hesitate to engage in it because they do not feel capable. And this is a problem for deep tech, right? So the challenge, again, is not only to develop new skills, but to recognize and activate the existing ones. And this often requires this kind of a form of reinvention, building a new professional identity without actually trying to fit into the stereotypical images of what entrepreneur should be. And for that, honesty with yourself, right, and with others is a key. So honesty about what you can actually do and want to do, and what you cannot do, and what you do not want to do, and what, right. And the third one is aligning skills and values at the team level. Deep tech ventures do not fail because people lack competences. They fail because competences, therefore roles and eventually also values, are not aligned in the team, right? So here is another example. We never discussed how our roles would evolve over time. At the beginning, there were just two of us doing whatever needed to be done, but as the team grew, we needed clearer roles. People didn't even know who to report anymore, and we were giving conflicting instructions. We also kept postponing important decisions. I was frustrated because I felt my co-founder was stepping into my area, and she felt the same. In other words, the problem is not individual skill, but the kind of absence of this kind of shared structure of using those skills. And the useful way to see this for those young entrepreneurs is to look ahead. When your product is on the market, what skills and competencies does your team actually need? Technical development? Is it customer support? Is it business development? Because without this kind of clarity and mapping, the teams start working against each other. And this alignment is not only, of course, about how team members position themselves, but also about values. As another founder put it, we had to remove a co-founder and it almost killed the startup. But we had no choice. Fundamentally, our values were irreconcilable. So investors made it very clear it was a no-go. No, things are much better, and even if we hire, we pay a lot of attention to shared values. So the alignment is not only about skills, competence, but also expectations and values. Investors are not investing only in technology, they are investing in a team. And deep tech success is not only about the kind of assembling these brilliant individuals around you, it's about building a system that actually works. A team that can think, decide, and move forward together. And this is exactly where our major gap remains in our ecosystems. We are actually very good at supporting technologies. We are improving at supporting financing, we are improving in supporting markets. But we are still learning how to support the people behind them. So overall, the shift that we propose is simple, but not trivial, from supporting technologies to fully supporting the individuals and teams who make them viable. Because in the end, it is the technology that does not build the companies, people to build the companies. And here are some of our references, kind of projects that we have supported on human challenges throughout the deep tech programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Telo, for being here with us. And